So boom, we're gonna start it like this. Watch these clips of Drake being interviewed by Elliot Wilson.
Well, I was writing for Beyonce, or working with Beyonce. Not writing for, working with. I hate saying writing for because she's a phenomenal writer. Bars. Yeah, she has bars on bars. So we worked together, and then Jay was playing me Magna Carta. Thing that set me off was the fact that Uncle West got a shout out. I don't know if you guys know Uncle West.
Worldwide West.
Yeah, Worldwide West. He's like you could clap for him if you want.
Worldwide West, baby.
To be honest with you, I actually did a DNA test for my son, and they came back to us and they said that the DNA test got ruined in transit, and that they couldn't.
Now, watch these more recent clips as far as the Drake interviews we've been getting for the past couple years.
What does spin mean?
Spinning is like I would go around someone else and do something to them for you. I'd spin there.
Did you make that up?
No, I didn't know.
Never heard that before.
I mean, I wouldn't peg you to hang out in the trenches of Atlanta, so I wouldn't.
Did you hang out in the trenches of Atlanta?
I do sometimes, yeah.
Still?
Sometimes.
And you spin about people?
If somebody was, I don't know, violated you, would I go do something to them? Maybe, yeah.
I talked to a therapist one time, and he made this point about being no matter what kind of woman you're chasing physically, right?
Mm-hmm.
You like ass, you like titties, you he's like, you have the biggest tits in the room. He's like, you walk into any room and you have just the most gigantic tits. That's why I relate to girls with huge tits.
Yeah. You made me look down. You kept saying I had a huge tits.
I wasn't really saying you. I don't know why I was looking too. That was crazy. I envisioned you as just fucking monster.
Just knockers.
Jug.
Just mommy milkers. Just here.
I know.
I was just trying to have an interesting story, and then it obviously.
Glenny Balls has an interesting story.
What is it, Glenny?
He has a necklace for every single time he's ever thought about boobs. That's it right there. We got to get it redone, though, because he got that when he was 14.
So with that, you see the different vibes in the interviews, and there are a few things I want you to know. I'll give you those after we go over, what's going on. So Elliot Wilson made some tweets about Drake, pretty much criticizing him for not doing interviews with the culture. So Elliot Wilson put out a tweet saying any interview Drake has done after the Rap Radar interview has been a silly pile of mid. He criticized him, quick post and delete. After that post and delete, the smoky smoke came. You can't dodge your smoke. Once you put it out there, it's on the internet forever. That's why I got the screenshot. So after that, he then goes into a whole nother, tirade, stuff like that. I'm not going to quote it verbatim. You can read it. It's on the screen. He basically says, no knock to Yachty, because Yachty is of the culture, but, he's doing these silly ass interviews with these people who are not of the culture. And it would be real cool if he would sit down and kick it with somebody of the culture and give a real interview. And it doesn't even have to be with me. Now, that's important. Keep that in mind. We'll come back to that at a later point. But as far as Akademiks, he also had a quote that's mentioned in the Yahoo article. He basically criticized J. Cole and niggas of that stature for not coming down and doing real interviews with, even if it's not him as well, he pretty much says that, but not doing interviews with hip hop media outlets that's really going to ask you real hip hop questions and stuff like that. So with all of that being said, that's the criticism from Elliot. You then have Drake commenting on Elliot Wilson doing a Rolling Loud interview with Trippie Redd, basically he fresh off the stage type of interview. So with that, I'm not going to go verbatim. You can read it, but I'm going to paraphrase what Drake says. He basically says, this cat shits on me for not coming onto his platform, but he on some Yes Jules shit, running down on motherfuckers doing flash interviews at Rolling Loud. Just admit, dog, the youth is taking over, big dog. He said something along those lines. Now, the first thing we're going to address is the youth takeover, because it's very simple, man. when he talks about the youth taking over and, you know, Elliot Wilson going out and doing these interviews at, you know, Rolling Loud, if you look at Elliot Wilson and Rap Radar, Elliot Wilson fits the demographic of real hip hop media. As far as niggas that like, you know, think Pusha T, Griselda, Freddie Gibbs, and all of that, like, are the coldest niggas in the game. They value lyricism, they value skill, all of that stuff. They value that type of music. So when you look at, you know, other platforms like that, you would compare Elliot Wilson to, you know, I don't even know if they do this podcast anymore, but Warren Epstein with, you know, Rosenberg, or even what's the dude name from Hot 97? It's not Rosenberg. Ebro, you know, Ebro. And this Ebro is a perfect example because that nigga tried to give Uzi a DJ Premier beat, which DJ Premier is a super legend. And I know Absol got mad at the nigga for not rapping. He was like, man, you mud if you can't rap on a Premier beat. It's like, bruh, the whole wave that niggas come from is not that. That's not what niggas do. That's not what niggas 1-2 is. And I'm not saying Elliot Wilson or, you know, even I think I mentioned Bootleg Kev, you know, and you got a few other people who you could put in that category. And I'm not saying that they don't respect what the youth is doing, but somebody like Ebro, like, he clearly didn't respect what Uzi had going on. He didn't respect Kodak either. That's a theme in Hot 97, which is why you don't see too many interviews with like popping young niggas, you know, like NBA Youngboy and stuff like that. And just saying like an NBA Youngboy, Kodak, and niggas like that, they might sit down with a Bootleg Kev and stuff like that, but you don't see too many Rap Radars with those types of rappers. Because at the end of the day, a platform like Akademiks, who caters to, you know, the SoundCloud era and back meaning to this current date, like rappers from the SoundCloud era to this current date, he caters more towards the youth and what's hot, what's new, what's fresh. And that's the wave he's staying on. He's not, you know, trying to cater to the underground or the real hip hop or none of that. He might speak on it when it comes to them beefing and stuff like that. But when he having music conversations and stuff like that, it's going to be centered around, you know, those types of rappers. Like, for example, niggas on motherfucking Rap Radar is not having a Did Little Pump Fall Off or what's going on with Smoke Perp. They not doing that. So to that point of Drake saying the youth took over, that's where, you know, Akademiks' focus is, and that's how come Akademiks can get the Rich the Kid interview and people that's coming to his platform and all of that stuff, as where Elliot and Rap Radar and a lot of these other hip hop, you know, media platforms, that's not where their focus has been, really getting those guys on they shit. And I can't say Bootleg Kev so much, but you understand Bootleg Kev fits like the demographic that I'm talking about, the real hip hop demographic that really values lyricism, skill, all that shit. So that's one part of that. But the other part is, that's not why the youth took over, big dog. That's not why Drake is not going to do these interviews at these platforms. That's not why. Now, as far as Drake is tapped into what the youth has going on and all that. But Drake is like 35, 36, somewhere in that ballpark. Might even be a little bit older. So Drake is far from the youth, but Drake, you know, is a part of the youth when it comes to hip hop because he's still relevant. He still makes sure he stays fresh and stays tapped into what's going on. But even then, that's not why he's not doing these interviews. The reason he's not doing these interviews, look at the last 2 times he did interviews with Elliot Wilson specifically. In the 2 clips that I posted, the one interview, the first one, before he became Beard Drake, the nigga had to go and talk about the Kendrick Control verse. He had to speak on it. He can't come to that platform without having to speak on the bullshit. But guess what? The next time he sits down with Elliot Wilson, he has to go in depth and talk about this Pusha T beef and speak on it. He has to speak on it. So both times he had to talk about a spicy beef. He had to answer the tough questions. And I'll be honest, in my opinion, I feel like those were safe interviews. That's how I feel. I feel like Drake sat down with them because he knew they wasn't going to apply a crazy amount of pressure and drill into it and give him that much pushback. They were just going to ask the question and let him answer. That's how I've always felt about, that last interview with the Pusha T shit and him sitting there, because Drake wasn't doing a lot of interviews. He's never been heavy on doing interviews, and that's one thing people overlook as well. But the last 2 times he sat down with Real Hip Hop, he's had to do that. With hip hop media, like he's had to do that. He's had to answer the tough questions. Even if we go and we look at somebody like Lil Durk, imagine Drake sitting from the sideline. Lil Durk sit down with Akademiks. He got to speak on every beef he done had in the past 5 years. Man, he got to speak on he got to answer all the controversial questions. So as a rapper, you have to sit down and think like, yo, do I really want to go through this? Most niggas say no, because guess what? They don't have to. When you look at somebody like Cardi B, she was interviewing with Vlad, man. Vlad couldn't get a Cardi B interview now. He couldn't. It's a few niggas that then sat down with Vlad, and Vlad is definitely a motherfucker who's gonna ask the tough questions and the toughest questions. He's just like that. You just gotta be real. Like, even if you want to say, oh, he be getting niggas indicted, he's gonna ask the shit that make niggas uncomfortable, and he's gonna go in on it. That's just what it is. It's a clip. I got a Rich the Kid saying, like, I do what you do. Like, I try to ask people, I try to come at the question 6 different ways and ask people the same question 6 different ways so they can answer it. You're not gonna get that off on me, dog. That's what Rich the Kid, not Rich the Kid, but what's the boy name? Skipper the Flipper. It's not Rich the Kid, it's Skipper the Flipper. He said that. That's the type of interviewer Vlad is. He's gonna get under your skin. Elliott is not that type of interviewer. And that's fine. And that should be a layup for Drake. It's a safe space. But even then, Drake doesn't want to answer all these beef questions every time. You know how many shots Drake took on that 21 Savage album? You think you want to sit down and talk about all them shots? What benefit does it have for Drake at this point? It has none. So when it comes to doing an interview, you know what interviews do. Interviews show your personality. Interviews give you a look into who a person is and stuff like that. Think about Michael Jackson when he was at peak fame, sitting down with Oprah and stuff like that. It lets you inside to a person's life. You don't have to do it because The Weeknd doesn't do interviews. There's a lot of people who you just don't see do interviews heavy. But Drake wants to give that other side. So what does he do? He goes and sits down with, not speaking on Yachty, but the goofballs, as far as like, the other people he sat down with are comedians. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful to them, but they know they're having satire interviews, and it's cool. That's great. It's fun for Drake. It's entertaining for the people, and that's what it is. So that's why Drake doesn't want to sit down, and that's how come J. Cole and motherfucking Cardi B and some of these other rappers don't really be trying to sit down and do the interviews, because clearly it is just 2 reasons. Number one, it's not of any real benefit to these superstars in most cases. It's not gonna make they bag adjust. It's not gonna do nothing for they bag. And then the second thing is, they have to deal with all the controversy that's going to come from the questions that they ask. And think about this real quick, man. R. Kelly done walked out of one interview, and R. Kelly is like the most controversial figure that I can think of, just keeping it 500,000. So he's not the best example. But R. Kelly has walked out of interviews because of controversial questions. In the last interview he gave, he went fucking crazy. I'm fighting for my fucking life. I don't know how to hog tie people. So that's the type of shit niggas got to deal with. Niggas don't want to deal with that. Now, the last thing I'm going to say is when we go back to, Ak and Elliot Wilson saying, even if it's not with me, you you should do it with somebody. I could understand him saying that, but let's keep it 500,000, man. I done seen Ak get mad at rappers. He felt like they owed him. He felt like Chief Keef owed him. And he's also said it plenty of times, like, these rappers owe me. If they don't want to sit down with me, I'm not fucking with them no more. He just felt so entitled from all the media coverage he's done for these dudes that he actually capitalized off of, that they owe him an interview. He felt entitled to these interviews. And as far as Elliot Wilson, I don't got anything like that on him. But the thing about it is, if you look at Elliot Wilson specifically, the fact that he's upset that Drake is not sitting down, we got to be honest, he's mad he's not sitting down with him again. If it didn't have nothing to do with him, he wouldn't say nothing. But we'll just even put real hip hop media. We'll just put hip hop media in there. But he's mad that he won't sit down with him, and Drake gave him 2 legendary interviews. That's not enough. That's not enough for him to just be quiet, be grateful for what he got, and keep it moving. And I'm going to tell you why. This is why. We already spoke on the entitlement. He has the same entitlement the Akademiks has. He feels like he's entitled to these interviews and stuff like that. The second thing is, but the other thing, you know, this is not so much for Akademiks. It is to an extent, and I'll tell you the extent it is. You know, Akademiks is good, period, point blank. You know, he's good. But when it comes to Spotify, his Spotify platform is interview based. When it comes to Rap Radar, for the most part, it's interview based. It might not be interview based, but he does interviews. You know, him and his boy do interviews. So if you're not getting the interviews and you're not getting the hot interviews, you're not eating. The platform is not thriving. And I know Akademiks, he probably got that 200 mil or something like that. He locked in with Spotify and it's all good. He gonna get paid whatever he gonna get paid. But at the end of the day, he has to do the numbers and he has to build. The platform has to get bigger so that when it's time for that renegotiation, instead of 200 mil, he could get 3, something crazy, something stupid. And he might not have 200 mil because I think that's the Joe Rogan shit. But regardless, you want to up the price. You don't want to go down. So when it comes to that, he's definitely got to get the hot interviews. He's got to get the numbers. So when it's time to sit down with the business people, look at the numbers I did. Look at what you're paying this nigga. You might not value me that much, but I need something bigger. I need a bigger bag than I got last time. That's just what it is. I can't speak on Rap Radars too much because I don't know what network they're signed to or anything like that. But I can tell you, if you're relying on interviews to whatever extent you are, you're going to need the hot interview. So that's just all it is. You know, these cats strive, survive, thrive off interviews. So if they can't get the hot interview, you know, it's going to at least peeve them a little bit. So you have the entitlement also with, you know, I need to get the hot interviews to keep my shit going so I could get the bigger bag the next roll around. So that's what it is. And that's just the truth. Let me know your thoughts. I'm out.